So I just finished tasting through 3 of our 7 Chardonnays with 2009 vintage, Patson Hall. The 2009 vintage was an excellent year, a very good growing season. A very dry winter, cool year, not a lot of hot spells during the season, and particularly nice weather around harvest. These wines are very typical of the vintage, where they have great purity, a lot of fruit qualities, a lot of depth and character to the wines, but also a real elegance and persistence of flavors that I'm very happy with. So the 3 wines I tasted today, the first was the 2009 Dutton Ranch Chardonnay, which is from Russian River. This is one of my favorite vineyards to work with. The Dutton family has been in Russian River for 5 generations. This wine comes from some of the oldest Chardonnay vines planted in Sonoma County in 1969. So there's a lot of character that comes from old vines, more intense aromas, more flavors, naturally very low yields in the vineyard, which tend to drive a lot of complexity and concentration in the wine. And 09 was a great vintage for Russian River. So this wine is noted for its real high-tone aromatics, very floral and fruity, green apple, peach, sort of a narcissus or almost jasmine-like quality to the aromatics. The oak is playing a secondary role here, very spicy, a lot of clove and cinnamon. Very rich wine, but lots of acidity. This pulls off a nice balance between the richness of the Chardonnay and the acidity of the cold region that this comes from. And so I'm very happy with the 09 Dutton Ranch. I think it's spot on, exactly what I'm looking for. The second one I tasted was from Hudson Vineyards. This is located in the far eastern portion, actually it's western portion, right on the line. Eastern portion is Sonoma Carneros, western portion of Napa Carneros. And it's in quite a cold area. Lee Hudson bought his property in 1982, and this is the coldest site on Hudson's property. We share this particular vineyard with Lee Hudson himself, who makes his own wine, so when the vineyard owner makes wine from the same area as you, it's a good testament to the quality. So the Hudson is very rich, has sort of a smoky hazelnut quality, more like apple pie, a little bit of brioche, cinnamon, quite dense and oily, longer, fleshier, richer palate than the Dutton. More of a wine that would go, I think, with a little heavier foods, maybe some roast chicken or even wild mushrooms, truffles, things like that, whereas the Dutton is much fruitier and more lively. I think would go better with lighter foods. Hudson is very powerful, great aging wine. This wine does very, very well in the cellar, and 09 was a great year for this. So all in all, very good news on the Hudson Vineyards. I'm very happy with it. The third wine is the VID009 Ranch. VID009 is a vineyard that's owned by the Martinelli family. The Martinellis are another long-time Russian River homesteading family, been there for many generations. And this vineyard is located on Fry Road, so right in the heart of Russian River. It's a beautiful wine, compelling aromatics, very fruity, almost a fresh cut peach aroma, as opposed to the floral elements of the Dutton. This is much more like peach and apple, a lot of sort of apple pie notes as well, butter, sort of a nut crust quality, almost like roasted hazelnuts. Compelling concentration. This wine is big and full of flavor, but really light on its feet. There's a lot of acidity in the VID009 Ranch, and that keeps everything in balance and really moving. I like this wine a lot. Very successful vintage again. As I said, 09 and Russian River was a top-notch vintage, so very successful. So that's the 3 current releases. Okay, I just tasting 2 of the Pinot Noirs from the current release, the 09 Jenkins Ranch, which is located in the Sonoma Coast, and the 08 Pizzoni Vineyards from the Santa Lucia Highlands down in Monterey. The Jenkins Ranch is a newer vineyard for us. We started working with this vineyard in 2005. It's farmed by one of my favorite viticulturists, Charlie Chenoweth, who has a lot of experience growing Pinot Noir in the Sonoma Coast. It's a naturally very low-yielding site. It's located off a Pleasant Hill Road near the town of Sebastopol, and the soils there are very poor, very low vigor, so these vines really struggle to make fruit. It's also quite a cold site, and so there's a lot of acidity and brightness to this. The aromas are very exotic and spicy, somewhat reminiscent of cherry liqueur, or maybe even like a spiced cherry pie kind of quality, very intense. A lot going on in the aromatics, very complex and layered. This wine is just a baby. 2009 is a great vintage for Pinot Noir in Sonoma County, and this vineyard really shows that. The concentration and qualities on the palate, but still at the same time very Pinot Noir-like, lots of high-tone aromatics, very intricate aromas. There's a real delicacy to the wine, but at the same time there's a lot of stuff going on, so a very successful vintage for Jenkins Ranch. The second wine I tasted was 2008 Pizzoni Vineyards. The Pizzoni family's been in Monterey for many, many years, and they own one of the more prominent and well-known vineyards in California for Pinot Noir, Pizzoni Vineyards. We've been working with the Pizzonis since 1997. Santa Lucia Highlands is very cold, also very poor soils, very low vigor vines. And the wines tend to take on a very concentrated, perfumey quality, very similar to a liqueur almost, or an eau de vie, very high-tone aromatics, lots of layers, extremely intricate. A real powerful wine as well, one of the most powerful Pinot Noirs we make as far as the flavors and the intensity on the palate. Now, the 08 vintage was a very good year for Pinot Noir. It was very cold and then around harvest quite warm, and so the wines show a lot of ripeness and roundness, as well as this fruit intensity that is very typical of Pizzoni vineyards. So a very solid year for Pizzoni, and happy to finally be moving this out. Thanks. Okay. So, the spring release is always a great time around here because many of our single vineyards have been in the bottle now 6 months, and it's time to show them to the world. And the 09s and 08s are a great vintage, so it's a really beautiful time to be trying these wines. I think they have a long history ahead of them, but it's my favorite time of year besides harvest because now the wines are really coming into their own. And these are starting to show some of the great qualities that the 09s have, and so come by and taste.